Hello and welcome to Weird Around Illinois. We are going to spend some time today talking about another story submitted by one of our listeners. This one out of Southeast Missouri, and we think it's going to be fun. Let's get to it and let's get weird.
I was out in front of my house when something caught my attention. It was around 2 p.m. or so when I seen something walking towards me through the hayfield. It was a huge wolf-looking animal. It was on all 4 feet, just walking like he was stuck in stalking mode. The closer it got, the bigger it got. I'd guess its height was between 3 or 4 feet from foot to shoulder. The color was black with a reddish tint, but the eyes were wide apart. The eye color was amber and seemed to glow in the sunlight. The weight must have been close to 200 pounds, give or take. He kept moving towards me at a slow pace. About 100 feet, he stopped and just watched me. All I could do was watch him watching me. After a few minutes, he turned and went back to the woods. Then he turned and stood up like a man on 2 legs. Henry, or this individual is, raised his lips to show a mouthful of teeth.
His dog, I think.
Oh, that's his dog.
Yeah.
Okay. And then vanished into the woods. A few days had passed, and one night I went outside to smoke. I began hearing growling from the wood line, so I turned to look. All I could see was 6 sets of big glowing amber eyes looking at me from the darkened wood line. I smoked my cigarette, then returned inside. Later that week, my son-in-law came to get some laying hens, and I asked him if he'd seen anything strange while hunting. Henry said no. Why? I went into what I'd seen easy so as to not spook him. Henry laughed until I took him outside that night and showed him these amber eyes watching us. Now, it is almost nightly. I've seen tracks in our lower lot at times, but none up at the house yet. Periodically, I see one or more during daylight hours and at night still. I don't mess with them, so far they haven't messed with me. When I clean deer or any other game, I toss the remains in a pile off they want them. Usually the next day, the mess is gone. Thank you, and there's a lot more encounters, Henry.
Okay, now I'm thoroughly confused.
Henry
Henry can't be the dog. He's got to be the person, but he says Henry's also the friend. I don't know.
When I put this together, put this on the format, it's like, who is Henry? That's the most confusing part for me.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have jumped into the middle of it. I should have just waited till the end so we could all sort it out together.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm guessing Henry's the guy?
Yeah.
And he just referred to himself in the third person a couple times?
Maybe.
Alright, well, fair enough. So, why don't we talk about some key details from that story?
Yeah, so one key detail is that the first sighting was at 2 p.m. and it happened in an urban setting, not just like a road next to woods or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the most common sighting is at a road for a Dogman. That's the stereotype, but I think in an urban setting, it's a lot more rare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to be close to the woods, but it was right by a house. So.
Yeah.
Another key detail is that they're on all 4. It's not like super unique. We've heard several sightings where they're on all 4s.
Mm-hmm. I do find it interesting, though, that in this one, he kind of detailed that this thing was on all 4s most of the time, and then just stood up, like, just to prove he could do it when he got to the woods.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was on all 4s temporarily, and then it went on 2 legs temporarily as well.
Third key detail is that it had a unique black or red color fur.
Yeah, I did find that he decided to add a hint of red in there. Like, that's sort of rare.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if that could be blood from a recent kill or something.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe just a stain on his fur.
Fourth detail is that the eyes were amber and glowing. Another detail that's very common with Dogman.
Yeah, the glowing eyes, certainly. I think amber's one of the most popular colors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good way of separating just some normal wolf or big bear from a giant Dogman.
Yeah, I think bears usually have dark eyes, if I'm not mistaken. So that's like a really good separator there if you're trying to figure out a Dogman versus a bear.
And our fifth key detail is that more than one person witnessed these, supposedly, which removes the possibility of hallucination.
Yeah, that's assuming Henry is not a dog and it's some human bear.
Exactly.
I hope that Henry was another witness, and not much more to say there. I mean, that just Yeah, that removes the hallucination thing if that was the case.
Yeah, and our final key detail is that it's whatever he saw was a creature that can take a bunch of deer carcasses and probably had it ready for dinner.
Yeah.
Deer carcasses are not light either. It's not like a dog could easily drag one out. Now, I would be curious, and we'll get into questions in a minute, but I would be really curious if when he leaves this stuff out there, if he sees drag marks where the stuff is brought into the woods. He says he doesn't find bones or anything. So if it's being dragged, it could be a wolf, it could be a coyote, it could be a dog. But if it's somebody's just picking it up and carrying it off, that kind of changes what we're looking at.
I mean, it said that there's a family of dogmen, so I guess if we were to think that way, it wouldn't be super impressive. I mean, that's a ton of muscle, but
yeah,
still, that's very irregular.
Yeah, definitely. One other key detail that I'd like to call out is the weight. He said that he estimated it at about 200 pounds. That seems very light to me for a dogman. I mean, usually when people talk about dogmen, they're talking 400, 500. That one encounter we talked about was over 1,000 pounds, I think.
Yeah, and for, I guess the height would kind of make sense as well, though. I mean, it was 3 to 4 feet when I was on all fours. I don't know, can't imagine it being horribly taller when it was standing up.
Well, I mean, if it's 4 feet on all fours, if he stands up, you figure that's going to add about 3 feet to his height. So he's probably in the 6.5, 7 foot range.
All right, yeah, maybe I'm just trying to reason with the 200 pounds.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the other thing is, how good are we at estimating weight? I mean, if I see a dog across a field, or a wolf, or a bear, or whatever, I'm going to give you a number. I have no idea if that number is anywhere near accurate.
Yeah, I just go by, the muscle mass. That's about it.
Yeah, that's, I would look at it and say, okay, is it bigger than me? If it's bigger than me, then it's higher than this number. If it's not bigger than me, then it's lower than this number. That's probably what this guy did.
Yeah.
Maybe if he's a big guy, maybe he thought it was smaller than him, so he estimated 200. If he's not as big a guy, maybe he thought it was bigger than him and estimated 200. I don't know. So this kind of leads us into our questions, which is a few things that I guess I would ask if we had Henry, or whatever his name is, in the room with us.
Yeah.
Why does he think these things are attracted to him? Or if he thinks they are attracted to him. I mean, I think, they seem to be coming back. So is it just because he's feeding them? Or is there some other connection that he feels with these beasts? Or, what's bringing them back to his house? Because we've witnessed this a few times where somebody's had an encounter with a dogman, and that, opens the floodgates, and now they're seeing the dogman on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, first you see one dogman in this case, then later you see a whole group staring at you pretty much, as one would assume with those amber eyes. Clearly they're interested in you or whatever you bring there.
And the fact that they haven't attacked him, I mean, that leads me to think that they are seeing him as both not a threat and possibly as a friend.
Yeah,
I'm thinking it might be a situation kind of like when you lose a dog or something, some pet, they'll come back. Maybe these are just nice dogmen. That
like an occasional free meal.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, perhaps.
So we talked a little bit about estimating the height and weight from where he was standing. I'd be curious, in addition to that estimate that he gave of the first dogman sighting, if he could tell, how high off the ground those amber eyes are when he's looking at them. When they're staring back at him out of the woods, are they all on all fours, or are they standing? And if they're standing, are they 6 feet off the ground? Are they 7 feet? Are they 5 feet? Those are all things I'd be really curious about. And we talked about Henry, of course. Henry, it's either him, his friend, his dog, his imaginary friend, or the dogman himself. I don't know. I'm not sure. We need to figure out some details on Henry. Now, it seems like he spotted the dogman standing in the woodline at a very great distance, so he may not be able to answer this, but I'd be curious about the structure of his legs. Traditionally when we talk about dogman, he's got thinner legs than a human, with that kind of rearward bend that a dog has because of the placement of the ankle and the elbow and everything. Basically what we think is his is his knee joint is actually his hip joint, and all that other weirdness. But
yeah, I mean, if it's bended backwards, that would probably also rule out maybe a bear or something of that sort.
Yeah. And always we want to ask people if they saw any mist or fog around the Dogman. Strangely enough, we are never getting a yes answer to that.
No. It's like all the online sightings that we read about. Yes, there's always fog, but then when we actually ask a lot of people, it's like, yeah, it's less common.
Yeah, it's like, no, bright, clear, sunny day, no problems.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of these encounters that we're receiving are more physical, not so spiritual or from portals or anything like that.
True. Yeah. This very much feels like an animal encounter. Just it happens that the animal's standing up.
Yeah.
It's not. There's not this feeling of witchcraft or alien encounter or anything like that. This is a very flesh and blood being that's being described in most of these encounters. So another question is the phase of the moon. That's something we're always wondered about, and I think it's because of that old connection between werewolves and dogmen.
Yeah.
The idea that maybe something transforms into a dog, or a person transforms into a dogman at a particular moon phase. Most people don't seem to notice the phase of the moon, and the ones who do, I think we've been all over the map on it. So maybe that's not a real connection. And of course, the other thing we always wonder about is the state of mind. And there are two reasons I would be curious about this person's state of mind, and any person's state of mind when they see Dogman. The first is whether or not certain emotions draw in Dogman, and that kind of relates back to our idea of why are they coming back to him. We've read about people or seen stories about people who seem to have Dogman encounters when they're in moments of total despair. We've talked to people who've encountered Dogman when they were angry or when they were wired or overtired or things like that. And of course, the other reason we want to know is, is it possible that this was a hallucination? Is it possible that this was either, obviously if the person tells us he's been binge drinking for 2 days, then we know that, and Henry, we're not making any implications about you here. But then we know that maybe this isn't as credible a sighting. Or even if, we find out they've been working 24-hour shifts for the last week, and they haven't slept in 4 days. I mean, that tells us that maybe their state of mind is not ideal for identifying a creature like this.
Yeah, and I know when I'm extra tired, I start to see things every once in a while. But I guess when you're on 1 hour sleep, that can probably be where you start to hallucinate, I guess you could say.
Definitely. That's when I start seeing stuff out of the corners of my eyes, and I have to, double check and make sure that our house isn't infested with shadow people or something.
Yeah.
But this guy saw it during the day sometimes, I think. So kind of take that out of the question.
Yeah, again, unless he's been up for the last 36 hours and he's looking at it in the daytime. So, with all that in mind, knowing that there's a lot of stuff we don't know, knowing there's a lot of stuff that, maybe we need some clarification on, what do you think he saw?
Yeah, I mean, was it a giant bear? Or, some kind of giant wolf? I don't know.
I will say that I'm more open to the idea of a bear on this account than many of them, just because of the way it moved. Because it was on all fours, it was running across the field, and then it was only when it was in the woods that it stood up. It could have been leaning against a tree or something when it stood up, which is something bears do frequently. The argument I see against a bear, there are a couple of them. I mean, number one is the eye color, and number two is the fact that bears don't usually travel in packs.
Really?
Yeah. Usually, maybe you'll see 1 or 2 bears, but I don't think you're going to see 6 bears in a group.
Interesting.
Certainly not in southeast Missouri.
And I wouldn't expect to see them both during the day and night.
Yeah.
I expect them to sleep at some point.
Good point. Yeah. So, I mean, the other possibility is wolves. I think they have wolves in southeast Missouri. Certainly the behavior is like a wolf. Wolves usually don't stand on 2 legs for any length of time.
No, I mean, even if it were to be leaning against a tree for whatever very rare reason, I mean, I don't think it would be that tall, above 3 to 4 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's awfully tall for a wolf. So, I mean, that leaves us with the other possibility that it's Dogman.
Yeah.
I mean, we often come to this conclusion, it seems, on these tales. But you know, if it walks like a dog man, and it eats deer like a dog man, and it's amber eyes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot hinting towards this. If it's not a wolf with the hind legs, that one question is probably the most important to me, if that were to be answered.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that would really... number one, we ruled out wolves. And probably most canines that are big enough, somewhat big. So that would only leave us with Dogman.
Yeah. So, I mean, where I fall on this, I guess I'm open to the possibility of it being a bear. Maybe a little less open to the possibility of it being a wolf, depending on his answers to some of these other questions. But based on the information that I have, I would lean more heavily toward Dogman than either of those two explanations.
Well, one more conclusion question that I need to ask you guys. Could this have been a peaceful group of Dogmen? I mean, I think they were somewhat, like, I guess, neutral acting, I guess you could say. They weren't aggressive in any way, but, I mean, what if these things could have been in some way trying to, I guess you could say, ally, friend?
I think they may have been like Bigfoot creatures in a way, just defending their territory. Even though this was in like an urban sort of setting.
Yeah.
I think this encounter could have gone a couple different ways. I think maybe when he saw the first one, the others came back in a show of force, as you described, kind of like a Bigfoot defending its territory. But I think when he started making offerings of those deer carcasses, I think they saw that this was a chance for them to coexist peacefully, and he kind of won his way into the pack.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, I've told you the story about, you know, when I was working nights and I had the coyote bring me the fresh kill because he and I had kind of found our mutual ground and become part of a pack.
Yeah. If you had an air fryer, you probably could have cooked that up and had a free meal.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe with a side of rabies or something. But
yeah, I still appreciated the gesture, though. That's it's always great when an animal accepts you into his world. So I think that may be what happened here. I think by presenting his fresh kill to them, I think he was showing that he respects them and respects their territory, and that they can all just get along. Now the question is, if he ever stops doing that, does he become the fresh kill?
Yeah, it's a good question. Hopefully he keeps feeding them.
Yeah.
Carcasses.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't stare into their eyes too much. That could probably be a bad sign.
Yeah. But usually a bad idea with any predatory animal to stare into its eyes.
Yeah, maybe it's like staring into the sun for too long.
Yeah, they see it as a challenge, and if you challenge a Dogman, I don't think you're going to win. Well, that was another wonderful story from our listeners, and we thank you for it, and we thank you all for listening and subscribing. And if you've got a story to share with us, by all means, please do so, either in the comments or in the submission form. And thank you all for subscribing.